we're going to talk about the Emperor card now. We're still in the Major Arcana, number 4. This is the Emperor, which traditionally the Emperor card traditionally refers to the father. Okay, so
that stern expression.
yeah.
Right off the bat. So in this hand, it's like he's holding a little globe of light or a bulb. I can't tell, or a grenade.
I think that's the orb. I think these are the symbols of what, kingship or something. I mean, if you see pictures of Queen Elizabeth, or in the TV series, they have the crowning of Queen Victoria, and they always have their arms crossed, and they're holding, in one hand they hold the orb, and in the other hand they hold something else. This looks like an ankh, but it represents power in the earthly world and power in the spiritual world, because she's being crowned in the church, right? And so in those programs, and from a British point of view, the Queen is the head of the church and the head of the country, right? That's the British perspective of what the Queen is. And so a traditional monarch holds the earth and the spiritual power, okay, which is the ankh. Do you see anything else special in that card per se?
Just his the knight's type garb. The chink,
okay,
chink,
so he's wearing armor.
Ready for war, basically.
Yeah.
He's ever ready.
Ever ready for battle, and he's wearing armor on his shins. So it's typically hidden under his garb, but
Ram, though, that's a sacrificial. He's conquered.
Yeah, he's conquered the rams. I think you nailed something though about father, that we expect our fathers to protect us, right? When we're little children, I'm going to tell my daddy on you, right?
And that's presentation to the world, that stern countenance is, I take no prisoners, basically.
Right. If you screw with my kids, I'm coming after you, right?
He's not the grinning fool.
Okay, so who's got the Emperor? Oh, you have the Emperor.
The Emperor, okay.
Okay, so let's look at that. So here's the Emperor in the Motherpeace deck. And so what else do you see in there?
Well, again, the stern expression, his arms are crossed, but the way they're tucked, it's almost like he's closed off, keeping his own counsel.
Right.
And the scenery in the back, there's a feast. It's like a celebration almost. It looks like a war scene painted on. I don't know if they're carrying off the, what is it? Was it the Scythian women? What was the?
Carrying off the women.
It looks like a woman he's
carrying off the women.
Not him, but somebody in the drama.
Somebody is carrying off the women.
So
but he's presiding over that.
Tales of glory past and the fruits of that, which is a little turkey and. I'm a vegetarian. I don't know what's spirit back there, but kind of.
Yeah, it looks like a turkey and some pomegranates and
something bloody.
Yeah,
under the knife there.
Slice of meat under the knife. Yes.
So he's obviously the victor.
Yeah, he's obviously the big man on campus with his helmet. Okay, so here it says. Okay, the Emperor. So I'm reading the Motherpeace explanation. The Emperor represents creative willpower, the force used to get things the way a person wants them on the physical plane. He can be bossy and tense, but he will get his way. You need to be sensitive You need to be sensitive to the particular person and situation in order to read this card correctly. Usually, the Emperor represents some use of patriarchal force, the dominance mode of activity. So when it leans to the left, there is a certain discomfort with that force, a shyness or holding back so that it is less strong and aggressive. To the right, it is extremely aggressive, a struggle to assert one's power and get one's way. Reverse, the Emperor is dethroned, that is, he, the ego, is no longer in control. This can feel disorienting, since whatever part of the self has been dominant is now out of power. But it is quite often a blessing, as the ego is thrown over in favor of a softer and more heartfelt part of the self coming to leadership. The tension may be melting. There's a chink in the armor. So I think this Motherpeace set is kind of interesting because it, besides suggesting reverse, it's also talking about tilting to the left or the right, and you can only do that in cards that are circular, right? Okay, so number 5 is the Hierophant. So traditionally, this Hierophant was a churchman, but I was taught to read this as a teacher. Okay, this is a teacher, but in medieval times, which this card deck refers back to, it was obviously the bishop or somebody like that was the teacher. But nowadays, it would be the teacher, and so the keys under his feet represent the keys to understanding, and he's got 2 underlings who are there learning from him. And again, you have 2 pillars, so suggesting the opposites. But when I was taught to read the Tarot, I was taught to read the Hierophant as a teacher or someone who's giving a lesson from society, okay? Somebody who's a big man on campus, you know, like the president of the university or maybe a professor or something like that. Or you're in a section of a history course that's being taught by a student assistant, but today we're going to have the real professor come and talk to you. I mean, I heard Jordan Peterson talking about some classes where they have 1,200 students in the section in the course, and so the professor comes in and teaches the 1,200 students, but then the other 2 meetings of the week is done by teaching assistants with 15 or 20 students in the room. And the big man only, or the big woman only comes in once a week to opine.
Drop his pearls.
Right.
Recline.
The big history professor when I went to college was Digger Graves. His name was Graves, Edgar Graves, but he was called Digger Graves. And he was the expert on medieval history. So, John, is this the one? Okay, so here's the Hierophant in the Motherpeace cards. And so what do you see in that?
Well, similar. I see the students like on their knees here, learning, absorbing wisdom. He definitely has a wisdom-like cast about him with this cloak over his head and so forth. It appears that he has an enforcer behind him.
An enforcer.
To enforce his authority.
Well, yeah, the Hierophant definitely has an enforcer, whether it's the Pope or somebody else. But here, the enforcer has swords, so he's serious. And And you're almost naked before him. I thought this woman kneeling was naked, but actually she has a buff-colored
Uh-huh.
a buff-colored shift on.
And there's a, what do you call this? Chalice of wine back here.
Okay.
And a church symbol. So there's kind of a church aspect to this.
Well, there's certainly a religious aspect in the Rider-Waite version, and
you've got a stained glass window, and you've got a chalice of
yeah, and even in the Motherpeace, which tends to be more Polynesian in its sense, you have a religious aspect to it. And so it might be a spiritual teacher, I suppose, as well as a secular teacher.
I have
Okay.
a question on that one real quick. The
Right.
3 fingers, you see that a lot in old medieval art. Was that a religious, like Trinity?
Yeah, I think it was referring to the Trinity. I don't recall. This is talking about this symbolic.
The way the fingers are, it's almost like
The way the
a
fingers are
truth-telling.
held. Yeah.
The priests used to always do that
Yeah.
Did
in the
they?
old mass.
My grandmother, it's funny because it resonated with me because my grandmother, when she was going to tell you, she'd say, I'm going to tell you what I know. And that's when you know her truth was coming and she'd do her fingers.
I'm going to tell you what I know.
With arthritic fingers held sideways, but that's when you knew it was coming, what she knew. And you weren't going to
Right.
argue with it, whatever it was.
Right. Okay. So,
Interesting, though.
so you can imagine that when this comes up in a reading, you might think of that. Okay, as something that, somebody's going to tell you the truth, or somebody's going to tell you the way society wants it, because that's what the Hierophant is doing. Okay, he's telling you the church doctrine, the dogma.
He's the collective unconscious.
Pardon?
The collective unconscious.
I wouldn't call him the collective unconscious. I would call him the conscious.
Like ego, like he's
Yeah,
not really aware of any.
these are the rules. My friend, let me tell you, these are the rules. You can think anything you want, but these are the rules.
The straight and narrow, and I've got this staff I'll beat you with to keep you.
That sort of thing. Okay, so now we come to the lovers. Okay, obviously, since they're naked and mature, male and female, they're representing actual lovers. Love before it is contaminated by material desire. Okay, and that is significant because when we get back to card number 15, the lovers in the Rider-Waite represent love before material desire, and the 2 people in the Devil represent material desire. And we definitely see that in our society today, and we'll get to that in a minute. But the angel is looking over them, and so what I wanted to do is read this section. I'm going to read for a few minutes from the Aion lectures by Edward Edinger, where he sums up a lot of the issues that lovers face. And so whether it's relevant to the cards or not, and it might be relevant to the cards, but I think it can be helpful to everyone, so I'm going to read it. Okay, so the ultimate goal of these masculine and feminine principles, which make up the Syzygy, is the Coniunctio, their union. This dynamic, the urge of the Syzygy to achieve the Coniunctio, lives itself out in external life in a fairly typical way. Everything is looking peachy. Okay? This is what I would call a concrete or exteriorized Coniunctio sequence. A man and woman fall in love. In other words, they fall into mutual anima and animist projections. That stage of things is really delicious. Each is convinced that he or she has found a soulmate in the other, and there is a blissful feeling of wholeness whenever they are together. On the other hand, there is a very painful sense of loss when they are apart. This initial state of things, because it is largely unconscious, usually cannot last long. It generally evolves in one of three ways. One possibility is that the concrete Coniunctio proceeds in life so that there is marriage, family, and a joint life, and the libido that had been flowing between the anima and animus projections is progressively led into the effort to develop a concrete existence together. The second possibility is that instead of a concrete Coniunctio, there will be a concrete separatio. In other words, the projection drops off for one or the other. It drops off for one person, and then the other is abandoned. When that happens, the rejected one is exposed to grief and despair and sometimes resorts to violence. This is the Dido phenomenon, the Medea phenomenon, the Don Jose phenomenon in Carmen. Extremes of despair are activated because one has lost one's soulmate, and this is experienced as a total defeat, a failure of the possibility of Coniunctio. The despair leads to destruction. The alternative is the realization that the other person was not the essential thing. Then one starts to make connection with the anima or animus internally. This has been expressed as when half gods go, the gods arrive, which was Ariadne's experience when Theseus abandoned her and then Dionysus arrived on the scene. So Theseus was only a half god, but Dionysus, man, he was the real thing. Okay, the third possibility is that progressive development occurs in the midst of the mutual projection. The individuals gradually discover that their in-loveness is based on a projection of the anima or animus, but as a consequence of having been the carriers of that projection, they are also led of the discovery of and the capacity for conscious object love. Then it becomes possible to love the partner as he or she actually is, simultaneously developing and maintaining a living connection in the inner image of the animus or the anima. So those are the three choices. I thought that was really... Okay, so you wanted to say?
It's like a yin and yang because we got the serpent in the garden. It
Oh,
happens
yes.
to be the tempter behind Eve, and we got the burning bush, which is the presence of God behind man.
Interesting.
But the yin and yang, that makes sense with
Yeah.
man and woman.
Yeah, sure it does. Right. And so, okay, so here's the Motherpeace lovers. And the Motherpeace lovers are only on cups, on Grecian urns.
They're not even full-bodied.
They're not even
Concept and
physical.
ideal.
Yeah, they're not even physical.
Sorry for that. Talk about star-crossed lovers.
Right. So we sort of skipped the Hierophant, but
But here it looks like there's a conjoining of marriage
okay.
and a marriage here.
yeah, there is a marriage in that, surely.
So there's a whole progression from lovers to married couple.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what the Motherpeace description says, okay, so John says there's a whole progression toward marriage, which definitely is true. Okay. All right, so the lovers represents a time of choice and rushing headlong to whatever the heart desires. What has been split apart wants to come together. It may be the split self trying to reunite. It may be a new relationship wanting to happen. The focus is on union, the desires for the opposite poles to come together. When the lovers tilts to the left, there is an emphasis on shyness or rejection. You are unwilling to believe you can have what your heart desires. You have trouble making choices. If it tilts to the right, It shows an assertive move towards the object of your desire. Perhaps you will actively initiate a new relationship or seek a desired job. Reversed, the card indicates all the troubles that come up in a relationship, conflicts, the pain of separations, dominance issues, sex roles, stereotypes, power struggles. Things are not going well in your relationship, or perhaps the relationship is over. Okay, so that's Motherpeace.
What's that card? Lovers?
The Lovers, yes.